Hello, everyone, and welcome to this workshop session, Google Tools or G Suite Buffet. If you wanted to pull up my slides, they are linked on the agenda, but they're also a short link up here if you wanted to type that into your browser. So my name is Brittany Coomer, and I'll be your facilitator today. Thank you for joining. A couple of goals for our session, ideally to understand how to provide options using Google for Education or G Suite tools, to make a plan to utilize some of the information from this session in an upcoming lesson, unit, or whatever your role might be in our school district. So why G Suite? Lots of connections to the UDL guidelines. I won't go through every single one, but G Suite tools are helpful because they allow you to collaborate with others. There's lots of accessibility tools and features built into Google for Education tools. There's anytime, anywhere on the go. If you have a Google account, you can access your resources on a phone, on a device, pretty much anywhere, as long as you have an internet connection. They save automatically, and then it gives students flexible options in how they can show their understanding beyond just writing something out. They can add pictures, video, and have choice in doing that. So what I'm going to do is show you some different ways you can provide students choices with Google resources. The way that I've organized the Google resources in this session is that they kind of go from a more lower level Bloom's order of thinking taxonomy to a higher level thinking taxonomy throughout each tool. So kind of building your understanding so that if you're looking for something that's a little bit more complex and layered, you have that option. Or if you're looking at attending this session to get something that's more of a simple type of use for your students, you have those flexible resources as well. All right, for starters, I'm going to start off with the most popular Google tool, I would say, and that is Google Slides. And it is popular for good reason. You can add lots of resources into a Google Slides presentation, links, videos, text, audio, pictures, whatever you need to. And it's great for showing students information, but also is a great tool for them to show their understanding. If you are fairly new to Google Slides, maybe you are more versed in Microsoft PowerPoint, but you want to make more of a transition over, I have linked resources here to get you started on just some of the basics. And some of those are self-guided trainings and courses, so you can work through things and practice your skills along the way. So the first thing I'm going to show you is more of a basic use of Google Slides, and that is just containing all of your lesson resources and activities and formative assessments in one Google Slides presentation for your students, whether they use that as a note-taking tool or they turn that back into you as proof of kind of doing this activity in this lesson, so you can use that to gauge next steps and future planning for your lesson afterwards. So this is called Hyperslides. It's a similar concept to HyperDocs, if you've heard of that. And a hyperdoc is basically a Google Doc that has hyperlinks, hence the hyper part, and all of the additional resources for the lesson on one document. This is the same concept, but it's all contained in a Google Slides presentation. And the reason why teachers are gravitating more towards this Hyperslides version rather than a Google Doc is because you can add more content into Google Slides than you can a Google Doc. So there are lots of examples here, and I do want to give a shout out to Southside teacher Amanda Bodart. I pulled an example that she had given from a presentation a few years ago on HyperDocs to place in this session. So there are some elementary examples there, but the example I'm going to show you is a high school one. And if you click the pictures of my presentation, it should take you to the resource as well, where you can make a copy, whatever you need to do for this. So for this one, what this teacher did in this example is the teacher would give students, and this is the student's own copy. So it was kind of a living, breathing note-taking document for the students as they worked through the unit. So the way the teacher could get this to the students, maybe it was perhaps through its learning. The students had a copy that was made for them, whatever it needed to be. All right, so all of the teachers' resources and directions and links are here. There's opportunities for the students to write out their explanation and understanding here, and perhaps the teacher explains that at different points during the lesson. There's resources here for the students to explore and watch videos and go to outside websites. There's some graphic organizers built into here, and this was a unit Hyperslide. So this was more than just one lesson. It was several lessons in one, and it was kind of used as a resource to help students organize the information in one place. So that is the benefit of using this type of lesson structure, is that it helps your students manage their resources and that executive functioning piece, because it's all contained into one rather than lots of different documents scattered across their Google Drive. This is helpful for some of our students who are still developing those skills and are organizing their resources for all their different classes. This next example here, and the next two I'm going to show you, are actually vocabulary focused. So using Google Slides to support vocabulary development, vocab understanding, and developing their listening, reading, and speaking skills. So no matter what subject you teach, vocab plays an important role in that and helps our students develop a deeper understanding of the content in your course. So the examples I show on here are social studies ones, just because they were pulled from my classroom when I taught social studies. But you could use this in elementary school. You could use this in any other subject area because we all teach new vocab at some point or another. So this first one is a Google Slides spin on a tried and true instructional vocabulary activity called the Frayer model. If you have used the Frayer model before, if you haven't, it's basically having your students, you give them a word, like the example shown here, that's what this is. And the students write a definition, and then they manipulate their understanding or show their understanding of that word in different ways. So sometimes it's defining connecting terms, it's giving an example and then a non-example, or it's doing a video or a picture. And the way that Google Slides is helpful in this is that Google Slides allows your students to insert videos directly into this and pictures. So it's a little bit more of a UDL type of assignment than just having the students write it out on a piece of paper per se, because they can add in video and pictures and then maybe reference this at the end. Ways that I've seen teachers do this with their students is maybe students have their own little vocab deck and the students are filling that out and do all the terms on their own. Other ways that I've seen this is this teacher gives all of the students in the class editing access to one shared Frayer model presentation, and the students are responsible for maybe one or two terms in that presentation. They're the experts on it, and then at the end of the lesson, the whole slide has this glossary that kind of accompanies the content that was taught in that lesson. And that's what this example is. This math example is one that all of these students worked on together throughout this unit. And they were responsible for being the expert on one or two of these terms and adding the content and pieces there. So as you can see, it's helpful to use Google Slides because the teacher can kind of set up this formatting here, and then the students can add in pictures, screenshots, videos, whatever they need to do. The example that I have here is a template that you can use if you want to get started with this instructional strategy. You can plug in your own information, and then you can use It's Learning to give students their own copy. I've seen some teachers do this where it's a collaborative. So the students are in small groups, and that small group is tasked with being the experts on maybe 5 or 6 vocab terms. And the students have roles defined. So maybe student A does all the definitions, and then student B does all the videos. The only thing with that is that the Frayer is ideal if you're having students kind of manipulate the understanding of the vocab word in multiple ways on their own, and this kind of changes that, but this could be a way to kind of introduce students to this topic and this way of doing vocab if you haven't used that option before. All right, so that is a fun example there from vocab in Google Slides. The other example here is a word wall. So word walls are really popular in the physical classroom. I know lots of teachers that use them, and they're kind of fun. They update them with new terms the students are studying during the unit. Usually it has a picture of the word and the word itself to help students remember those new vocab terms. Now, a lot of us are teaching in a virtual environment or maybe a part-time virtual environment if you're in hybrid. So we still want to give our students those visuals to help them understand new vocab for a unit or a lesson or whatever we're teaching that day. But we don't necessarily always have the ability to put that word wall in the frame behind us when we're on a Google Meet, or if we're doing some type of screencastify presentation like what I'm doing. Maybe your computer is the total opposite side of the room from where that word wall is. You could make a virtual word wall to still bring in that piece, even if a virtual environment is where you're currently teaching and working. So here are some examples of that. And again, you can make copies of this, do whatever you may. I actually borrowed this idea from Corey Williams. She put that in one of her UDL newsletters. I think it was maybe her December or January newsletter. But I borrowed this example from her, and it's pretty awesome. So you could have students make their own word wall. Maybe they're the expert for one unit, or you're creating this as the teacher. And what's really awesome about this example is that I put the vocab words here. I use Google Images to find pictures of it and put it on here. But because Google Slides allows you to add more media than just pictures and text, I also added audio so students could hear what that word sounds like when it's being pronounced. And that is so helpful for UDL and multiple means of representation, perception, language, and symbols if we're giving students that audio option in addition to pictures and text. And the way that you can do this, and this is another tip that Corey was telling me all about that's pretty helpful, you can technically insert audio into a Google Slides presentation from Insert and Audio. But the only thing is there's not a audio recording tool natively built into Google Slides. It doesn't have that connection with YouTube where you can quickly search and then add it YouTube all within Google Slides. You have to record your audio somewhere else, and it has to be uploaded in your Google Drive for you to be able to search it and add it to this document. So what you can do is technically you can use the tool Screencastify, and you can just download the audio from your Screencastify recording and then put that in your virtual word wall. That's what I did for all those examples that I had on there. I'm recording on Screencastify right now, so I'm a little limited in what I can show you while I'm still trying to record this. So if I go to my recordings, yes, technically it's going to make a video because it's a screen recording tool. But if I click, I'm going to stop this from playing. You don't want to listen to my voice twice. Over here on the right-hand side, if I go below, there's download, and I can export the audio, and then that's what I can upload into my Google Drive and then insert into here. And it always puts that little microphone button, and I can resize that as I need to. So that is how you can add audio and make this dynamic word wall for your students as a reference, especially if you're teaching new vocab and it's a little tricky. All right, so the last example I'm going to show you here in Google Slides are a couple of different protocol activities that you can do with your students. So protocols are kind of a quick way to assess understanding and to structure some collaboration, discussion, and debate activities in your learning environment. This one specifically is from the book EDU Protocols by Marlena Hebern and John Corripo. They have a website that accompanies their book where you can get a lot of the resources and things they talk about in their book for free. So I would recommend, if maybe you don't want to buy the book, that you start there to get some examples. This particular protocol is called a cyber sandwich. So as implied, it is a little bit of a technology-based activity, and it uses Google Slides. And what it allows you to do is kind of do a think, pair, share with your students and a little bit of a jigsaw twist on it. So there's several different ways you can do this, but the idea is that partner pairs students are working together on a combined collaborative Google Slides presentation, and perhaps partner A is given one topic or resource to study, and partner B is given a different one. And they take their notes, they analyze their resources, they regroup, and they make this one collaborative slide together. It's almost like a Venn diagram where they're sharing things that the resources had in common or the topic was similar or different. They're discussing that. They're discussing it virtually, perhaps by just typing on the document. And then from there, sometimes teachers like to do like a follow-up activity, whether it's a written response or a Flipgrid video or some bigger type of presentation. This is giving the students the opportunity to collaborate and have that think, pair, share opportunity, even if they're separated by distance or in a virtual environment, and give some structure and kind of a way to organize that in one place. So there are examples here that I've given. Some of these have students looking at different topics. Some of them are having students look at the same topic and comparing and contrasting maybe the different information they took from that topic, because maybe one student understood, interpreted differently than the other. But you do have some options here on how you can do that. And there's lots and lots of examples. One of them is just a how-to, a template to get you started if you wanted to use that. The others are completed ones from students and teachers. And the great thing about doing this and using Google Slides to facilitate this activity is that you can give students some really great resources in this presentation. So perhaps you give students a text and a video, and that's the resources for their topic, or you do something that's just audio. You have some flexibility because it's Google Slides. The example that I'm going to show you right here is one that's completed. So the students would put their names here. You could put a learning objective if you want. So student A, their assigned topic was ancient Rome, and then student B was ancient Greece. So there's a video that's linked here. There's a text for the students. This is where the space where the student wrote his or her notes. Same thing here, but this is just a different topic. And then the students come together and they share their information. And then the follow-up activity could be an independent task where maybe the students write their own constructed response using evidence from their partner's notes. So it is a little bit collaborative here, and it's leveraging the power of the flexibility of Google Slides by putting in lots of these different learning resources for students in one place, but also using the flexibility and collaborative nature of Google Slides and cloud-based tools to have students working on one combined document together. All right, other examples here are some high school examples. There's some elementary examples on here as well. There's lots of different ways you can do this. I've seen some teachers in math classes use this as well. It's comparing different equations and functions, and the students explain the processes they went through to reach their answer. So there's lots of different choices and things that you can do within this tool as well. All right, the last thing I'm going to show you here in Google Slides, I was joking when I said the last one was the last one. This is truly the last one on Slides, is using Google Slides for eBooks. So this is, again, one of those higher order thinking tasks. This would be best if it's the end product or the performance task for a lesson or a unit. Another way to create eBooks or virtual books for your students is using the tool Book Creator. However, you're limited in what you can do on the free version. It does ask for money, and your students, you wouldn't be able to have a whole class of students use Book Creator for free. You would have to pay some type of cost for that. So this is a great way to give your students all the option to use eBooks as their performance assessment without having it cost money. So the cool thing is that Google Slides, you can change the dimensions and the way a Google Slideshow presentation looks by just clicking File, Page Setup, and you can make it the length and width of a piece of paper and the like. So there are some examples that I have linked here for you to peruse and kind of look over, as well as templates and getting started. And the cool thing is that because it's Google Slides, your students can add in audio, they can add in video, pictures, all kinds of multimedia, pick a theme, and make it look really, really great. And it can print pretty easily as well if you want to have it print as well. I've seen teachers use this in foreign language classes, and the students record audio of them saying the words and reading the book aloud in different languages. So that's a really powerful way to bring in some of those pieces as well. All right, the next Google tool we're going to talk about is one called Google Drawings. And this is one of the cool but sometimes forgotten tools in the G Suite Cloud Productivity Suite. So Google Drawings is initially designed to be a graphic design tool. It's kind of like a similar version to Microsoft Paint, where you can add illustrations and things like that. But because it's Google, you can add in different multimedia and share it, and everyone can be working on it, collaborating on it at the same time. So Google Drawings is available to everyone in BCSC. So teachers can use this to make posters and things, but it's also a great resource for your students to have as an option for organizing information. So one way you can use Google Drawings in the classroom is through graphic organizers. And this is a great way to give students some options and to kind of have a buffet of note-taking tools in your class, because some students might prefer to have a digital note-taking tool, and this can be a tool to facilitate that. Again, technically, I started out with Google Slides because it's the most flexible. You could use Google Slides for this. The only thing that I like a little bit more when it comes to taking graphic organizer notes on Google Drawings is that it's easier to connect the lines and things, if you're particular about that, on Google Drawings than it is Google Slides, because Google Drawings was designed for that purpose. So there are some example templates here that you can borrow and copy. There's anything from Venn diagrams all the way to a fishbone chart, lots of different ones. There's examples as well and other resources aside from Google Drawings for graphic organizers if you wanted to peruse some of those options too. So here's an example of a student product for a graphic organizer. And this is just one over the French Revolution. So again, because it's Google, you can add in these different elements here. You can add in pictures, you can add in text, you can change the size of this, change the background, add links, whatever the student needed to do. So this is a dynamic graphic organizer there. To get to Google Drawings, you'll just go to drawings.google.com, or if you just go to your Google waffle menu, it's there. It's just a little bit further down the page. It's the same process to insert media in Google Drawings as it is Slides. Insert menu is your best friend. You can link and add things there, and you can share just like you would in Google Slides up here. One of the other creative ways you can use Google Drawings to support note-taking and information processing in the classroom is to use Google Drawings for visual notes. So if you like to do sketch notes and your students gravitate towards that, a big appeal of sketch notes is that students are drawing and kind of engaging those different parts of their brain is a great way to help them remember the information. But sometimes our students might struggle with holding a pencil, but they still want to do that option. This is a way to accommodate for that. I presented this to a teacher, I think about last year, and she just wanted to try it out to give this as an option to her students for taking notes. And I connected with her afterwards, and she said that she was surprised at the number of students who actually ended up liking this. She probably wouldn't have picked this note-taking style for herself, but there was a handful of students in her classes that this was their chosen way to take notes, and they really liked it because they could add in pictures, make it visual, make it dynamic without having to hand draw everything themselves. So here are some examples of that. It's the same type of principles as what I was just showing you a few minutes ago. The student was just working on this as the teacher was lecturing in class or as they were reading a resource. This is their note sheet for that day. All right, and because it is a Google resource, it saves it automatically in the student's drive, so they would never lose access to it. A science example here is the student was creating a diagram of the different parts of an animal cell and could add the labels and pieces there. So again, these are here for you. Maybe these are ones from your subject area, so you could copy these and use them as you may, or you just use these examples for your students if you're trying to integrate this option into your classroom. All right, last little bit we're going to go over here soon. We have two more tools we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about Google Docs and then Google Sheets. So Google Docs is probably the most well-known, I would say, tool in the G Suite family because it was one of the first ones that Google came up with and is most similar to Microsoft Word. The cool thing is that you can add in a few more Googly elements to it, YouTube videos, links, things like that. You can't embed a video, but you can link to it pretty easily in Google Docs, and you can all be sharing and working on it at the same time. So the awesome thing with Google Docs is that you can use this and use the power of Google tools and its learning together to create really awesome resources for your students. It's their own editable copy that they can utilize. So one of the great ways you can kind of combine Google Docs and really not just Docs, any other Google tool in its learning and provide options to your students is by giving students their own copy of a resource, which you can do using the Google Integrated Assignment feature on its learning. So maybe you're using Google Docs and it's a note-taking tool for your students and you want to give them a template or a version, whatever resource that you've put together, but you don't want them to mess up your original and you don't want to have to instruct students to click File, make a copy every single time because chances are you'll probably end up with emails because students just directly requested access instead of making their own copy. You might get some no names turned into you, or they'll just share it directly into your email and it becomes a lot to manage. It can get pretty messy really quickly. Its learning has a feature through the assignment tool where you can force copies of Google resources to students. It names it after the student and it holds it on its learning so that whenever you need to have students turn in that Google resource, they just submit it on its learning instead of sharing it with you and cluttering up your email. It's all in one common location. So to do that, I would go to my It's Learning course. And in the top right corner, I'm going to click Add. All right. And then I can click Show All to see all of them, but I'm on the screen right now. And I'm going to click Assignment. So technically, you have to use the assignment tool for this. It doesn't necessarily mean that this has to be an assignment that students turn in. Maybe it's just an option for the students. This is a note-taking tool. You're not going to grade it. You would have to use the assignment tool to send this to them so they have their own version of it. But you don't have to necessarily call it an assignment or something that you assess and grade. I've had teachers ask me that before, and no, you don't have to set up those elements unless you want to. It's just a choice. So maybe this is my notes sheet. I could type out instructions here. If I am setting this up as an assignment, I could set up my assignment settings here, the visibility, deadline, what students I want this to be assigned to if it's only a few, and any standards related to it. And then down here at the bottom is where you're going to use this Google connection and its magic. The first time, you'll probably have to connect your Google Drive. So I'll click Google Drive. It'll ask me a couple of questions. After you have paired your Google Drive account once, make sure you pair your school account, not any personal ones. Then that's where you would search through Google Drive and find the resource that you need. Over this example, I'm trying to give my students a note sheet that I want them to have. And it's a version that I've kind of set up some scaffolding for them so they know what they should include on this assignment, and I want to give them their own copy. So by default, it sets it up to where students can just view. If you want this to be a view-only resource, that's great, but chances are if you want students to have their own copy, we want It's Learning to do that work for us. So I'm going to click Make a Copy for each student, and then Create Assignment. And it does take it a few minutes, but after it finishes processing, I'm just going to toggle over into student mode so you can see what it looks like. It's going to keep my Google Doc there for my students to view, and they'll know that it's a part of the assignment. If I toggle into pupil mode, then I can see this assignment. And what happens when I click this as a student? Like I said, it's going to name this Google Doc after me, my student's name. And whenever I need to turn this into my teacher on It's Learning, I need to make sure I still submit it on It's Learning. Otherwise, even if I open this assignment and I type out everything I need in my Google Doc and I'm done, if I don't click submit on It's Learning, it doesn't tell my teacher that I'm done with the assignment. It just shows that I've opened it and that it's in progress, but I haven't submitted it yet. So that's a helpful thing to do if you're new to using this with your students, that you coach them through what that looks like. So as you see, it named it after me. I can edit this, do whatever I need to. And whenever I need to turn this into my student, to my teacher, I would click submit and it's good to go. It keeps it there. I don't have to dig through my Google Drive. On the teacher side of things, you can see your students' work and access them from here. So if I wanted to see if my students have been working on this, I can click it there. Otherwise, on the teacher side, you have a folder that It's Learning creates and shares with you, and you can access in your Google Drive if you click Shared with Me. And It's Learning is the owner of those files, but it has all of your students' work there. And the reason why It's Learning is the owner of your students' Google Docs, like the one I have right here, is so that whenever, if you set this up to have a deadline, it turns off the student access to that to where they can just view it instead of edit it. So that is a crash course there on the Google tools that you can use with It's Learning and take advantage of that. The last thing I'm going to show you here is a tool called Google Sheets. So if you're an Excel fan, this is Google's equivalent to Microsoft Excel. I will say it is not as robust, and some equations are slightly different on Google Sheets as what they see on Microsoft Excel. But you don't have to be a spreadsheet guru to be able to take advantage of this awesome tool. There's some ways that you can use this, even if you're not a math teacher or a business teacher. And those are the two examples I'm going to show you. So ways that you can use Google Sheets is really helping you as the teacher manage collaboration and group work and student responses. And that is through an external website that uses the equations and coding on Google Sheets to generate fun games, name pickers, and collaborative groups. And that tool is called Flippity. It is totally free to use. You can make spinner wheels with student names. You can make groups on it. Jeopardy review games. There's a whole lot of things here, and it's all powered through Google Sheets. So it walks you through each time. It has a little instructions thing here. If you see a template that you want to use, it basically puts in a special equation into the Google Sheet template, and then you just plug in your information and it works its magic. So an example of that is, here is one that is a spinning wheel. And here are the little pieces of information that I plugged in myself. I just copied this template, got it from Flippity, put in my names, my information here. So this could be student names perhaps, or topics that you discuss in class. And where it says get the link here, this is where I would follow these additional instructions to make sure that my product is finished. And the last little tidbit I'm going to show you today is using Google Sheets as a checklist for your students. So checklists are one of the awesome, easy, familiar things that we rely on to help us remember things, for whether it's going to the grocery store, picking up something else, or things that we need to get done that day. And they're used in a lot of professional settings as well. Anytime someone does surgery, they actually run through a whole checklist there with the nurse and the surgeon to make sure that everything is okay. So it makes sense that we should leverage and use this option for our students in the classroom, because it supports their self-regulation and their executive functioning skills, which is in the area of engagement and action expression on the UDL guidelines. So you can leverage Google Sheets to do that. There's a checkbox feature within Google Sheets the students can use to manage and keep track of their work. And if you combine Google Sheets with It's Learning, you can send students their own editable checklist. So a few minutes ago, I showed you how you can use the Google Integrated Assignment tool to give students a copy of a Google Doc. It's the exact same thing if you want to give them a Google Sheet that is a checklist. You would need to make the checklist first, but that's what you would attach to the Google assignment on It's Learning and make a copy for them. Now, a lot of the time we think, oh, well, a checklist should be an assignment. I'm not going to grade them on crossing off things on the checklist. Like I said, you have to use the assignment tool if you want to give them their own forced copy that's theirs. They can edit and cross things off on their own. But you don't have to call it an assignment. You can just call it a checklist. You don't have to attach a grade or a score to it. There doesn't have to be a deadline for it. It can just be a means for you to get students a checklist that they can edit in an efficient way. So the options, I have a written guide and examples here. Corey Williams and I did some training on this during e-learning last spring, so you might recognize some of that, but it's really easy to make any type of checklist on Google Sheets. I just go, for an example, I go to this spreadsheet that I have open. I have my terms right here. I could add those as specific to-do items. If I do insert, checkbox, it's now a checkbox and I can cross that off as I need to. So that could be really helpful for group work for your students. It could be helpful for a lot of different reasons. I would recommend using this tool with It's Learning to save yourself some time. So now would be the point in the session where you can kind of reflect and plan and think about some different ways that you can use what you applied. There is a sample note-taking sheet there if you wanted to organize your notes and your thoughts and your plans. Otherwise, you can just keep track of them verbally or maybe make a checklist and use that. There are additional Google tools that I've linked here if you want to explore further, if you're hungry for more Google. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining this session and participating. I hope you learned something that helps you and your students have more engaging options in the learning environment. And if you have questions, please let me know.